Thank you for your midterms during week 4. Hopefully by the time you see this video, the points and commentary will be up for your midterms. If not, don't worry, it will be up there very, very soon as I'm working on it after I post this video as well. For week 5, we're talking about civil disobedience and the rule of law, and you have several readings that relate to this. The first of which is a court case, Texas v. Johnson, and that deals with flag burning. Flag burning was a very hot-button issue for a time during the 1990s. It's still a hot-button issue, but you don't hear about it quite as much today. One of the issues involved is this an act that is protected by free speech rights or not? On the one hand, if you start banning certain actions because they are offensive to the general community, then you start down what's called the slippery slope. And what else will you ban? And what kind of rights are you denying to people for freedom of expression and freedom of speech if you do so? On the other hand, there are things that are important for the constitution of a good community. Is the flag not a sacred or sacrosanct object that should be protected? There are some people who say yes, there are some people who say no. So this is one of the court cases that taps into that ongoing debate. Another reading you have is by Alasdair MacIntyre. We have a piece here called Is Patriotism a Virtue? He's written a big book called After Virtue, which is very worthwhile if you want to pursue this any further. He says that patriotism is a virtue because it does do things like bring together a community under a common framework, a common paradigm of values and morals that keep the community alive and together. So in many ways he argues that patriotism is a virtue. But it's a civic virtue, which means one person's patriotism to his or her country might not be a virtue to someone outside of that country. There is a reading by Plato. You won't find it in your table of contents, unfortunately, and I'm not sure why they did that in chapter 13, but it is in there, so do flip through the pages and take a look. That's an important piece too. There are pieces by John Rawls and Ronald Dworkin on civil rights and civil disobedience, and just how important do we take our ideas of the social contract. The social contract being the ideas that we need to hold together so that we can live together in some semblance of peace and harmony. There is a letter from Martin Luther King Jr. called The Letter from a Birmingham Jail, which is a pivotal work in terms of the civil rights movement. And I invite you all to read that. That is a very important document in the history of social development in America. So I hope you'll take the time to read that document. And then there's a piece by Lon Fuller called The Problem of the Grudge Informer. And in this piece he talks about what happens after we have a different kind of government that comes into power. We can see this happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. We had some of that in South Africa after the end of apartheid. We had some of that after the fall of the Nazis in Germany, and also in the reconstitution of the government and society in Japan. But we can also see a little bit of that happening in the United States whenever we have a major shift in political control. The Democrats are now in power. The Republicans are out. There are some Democrats who want to go back and figure out what went wrong and who they can blame in the previous administrations. Is this something that's good or bad for the society or for the community? On the whole, so far the leadership has said, no, it's not good to look back, especially when there are things we need to do looking forward. But is that in fact the best way to do things, considering that sometimes you need to look back? Obviously that was not something that would have worked well at the end of World War II in Germany in many ways. So I invite you to look at all of these, respond on the discussion board, and I look forward to reading your ideas.